NBA crossover is coming to Cleveland for NBA All-Star. This February, experience the intersection of music, art, fashion, tech, and basketball at the Public Auditorium. Celebrate the past, present, and future of the NBA with special appearances, brand experiences, limited edition apparel and collectibles, and live performances. Check out NBA Crossover February 18th, 19th, and 20th. Get tickets today at NBAEvents.com.
You've dreamed of building a family, but the journey hasn't been easy. I'm Dr. Laura Shaheen, a reproductive endocrinologist helping people build families every day. On our new podcast, Baby or Bust, we'll be learning from both reproductive experts and people who have faced challenges just like yours. Join us every week for Baby or Bust, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to follow us so you never miss an episode.
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of DFS Today. This is your Friday, January 28th edition. I am Santino Gaccone, and I am joined by the one, the only, Friday Night Miracle himself, Mr. David Mccollum. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, Santino. We have another wonderful slate to dive into for everyone listening, and I just can't wait to jump in.
Yeah, it seems like me and you, we get these big, massive Friday slates. There are occasional ones where we're like, oh, it's only a couple games, but for the most part, I feel like every time we've done one, it's a big ones out there.
Absolutely. And you know what? It gets better and better every time we do one, so I'm excited to dive in.
I like it. All right, before we head on in there and jump head first, feet first, however you want to go about it, I want to let everybody know that at Sports Ethos, we have a brand new daily fantasy partner here, and that is Thrive Fantasy. Prop up with Thrive Fantasy on their mobile app or at thrivefantasy.com. Use code ETHOS, that's ETHOS, when you sign up to get a 100% deposit match bonus on your first deposit up to $100, plus either 2 or 4 free game tickets to play. Pick player props on the biggest names playing every night. Score points when your props hit, and the players with the most points win a share of the nightly prize money. All right, man. And as we're going, we're going to mention a couple people that we like on the prop bets. We're not going to take a segment up, but when we hit them, we'll mention the Thrive bet and what the prop is for that specific player when we get to those teams. And yeah, so tune in or keep listening. We'll hit your favorite people. Without further ado, my man, let's get right into this slate. First game on the docket is, weirdly, the only game at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tip-off. Usually on an 11-game slate, I would expect a lot more, but there is only one. That is the Detroit Pistons taking on the Orlando Magic. We don't have a spread for that one. What a doozy of a matchup that is. But I will throw it over onto, let me do the injury report. Jeremy Grant, Kelly Olynyk, Isaiah Livers, all out. Josh Jackson as questionable. Magic have the usual Etuan Moore, Jonathan Isaac, Fultz, MCW, and RJ Hampton is out for this one as well. But now I will throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at on this Detroit side of the ball?
Yeah, first game of the night. I usually like to dive in pretty slowly, but this game has some intrigue for me on the Detroit side of the ball, and that starts with Cade Cunningham. He's my only play, realistically, on the Detroit side. There's so many great young point guards in the league right now. Cade Cunningham, the rookie, coming off a monster, arguably one of his best games in his young career against the Nuggets, pretty practically putting the team on his back, leading the team to a near victory against the Nuggets at home. So I like Cade Cunningham, 7,700. That price tag is a little high, but when we start talking about other point guards in this type of price range, he's one of my favorites of the night. So I'm looking at Cade Cunningham and Cade Cunningham only on the Pistons side of the ball. I'm not going to have too many shares of guys like Hamidou Diallo, Saddiq Bey. They're all priced pretty well at this point. Saddiq Bey, 6,200, coming off a 33-point fantasy effort Again, his price did drop, but I'm not going to have too many shares of him here in this matchup against Orlando. Same thing goes for any of the big men here, especially with Jerry Grant potentially being ramped up as well. That should only muddy the minutes in terms of the front court here for the Pistons. So for me, it's Cade Cunningham and Cade Cunningham only. Any interest in Cade on your side?
Yeah, and I like it. The matchup is good. This is two bad teams going at it, and you like that, especially him coming off that monster 34-8-8 with a bunch of stocks. So I am with you on Cade, but I do have some interest in the front court here because Grant, they ruled him out. Olynyk shouldn't be playing in this one. He's in health and safety protocols now, so it does kind of open up things for both Isaiah Stewart and Trey Lyles. They're the only two in that center spot, and Sadiq Bey is going to get a lot of run at the power forward spot. Not so much Sadiq. I think the matchup is pretty good for him, though. He's probably going to see a lot of Wendell Carter Jr. On the perimeter, which is good for him. But I have some interest in both Lyles and Stewart at their respective price tags. I don't think the upside is great, but I think solid value here. Like Trey Lyles can get 25 points. He's done it in 3 of the last 4 or 3 straight games. He's got at 25 points. Again, I don't think you're going to have a 35-pointer there, but Isaiah Stewart as well. He's been in a lot of foul trouble. The last 4 games, he's had at least 4 fouls. It's kept his minutes down. But the Magic play a lot of big lineups, 2 big lineups. So if he can stay out of foul trouble, there is opportunity for him to put up another 25 points here too as well. So while I don't think the upside is great, I think if you're in that price range, they can both have value there. But I'm with you. I really like Cade in this one as well. Jumping on the other side of the ball, we're pretty much at square one. Everybody is healthy now, or for the most part, the people that have played all year outside of RJ Hampton, they're all in the lineup right now. We're trying to see where things shake out. Cole Anthony still hasn't caught fire outside of this last game, which he did. He had a nice 19, 11, and 6 double-double against the Clippers. But outside of that, that's pretty much his only game where he's gotten very good value back. Outside of that, Jalen Suggs, since he returned, he's kind of taken the reins here. I don't really like him at 6-1, but there's still some value to be had here. He's beaten that 3 of the last four games outside of the last game where Cole Anthony kind of asserted himself. Mo Bamba at only 5-2 very much intrigues me in this matchup. I know a couple games ago, only played a few minutes. Last game, played 26 minutes. The last 3 straight games, he hasn't gotten over that 26-minute mark. But if he can get back to 30, especially in this type of environment against a Detroit team, which obviously both these teams aren't great, but at 5,200, I think the upside is there to take a chance on him. So I will be doing that. And then I'm looking at a guy like Gary Harris. The volume isn't there since everybody's back, especially Suggs, but he's still getting minutes in the low 30s to possibly mid 30s. He played 39 minutes 2 games ago against the Lakers. That type of volume under 4K, you could definitely take a chance on that. So Bamba and Harris are the 2 guys I'm taking the most chances on here. How about you?
Oh, very interesting. Looks like normally we're on the same page when we're talking about these games on the Friday night slate, but apparently not tonight so far. For me on the Magic side, I'm looking at Cole Anthony at 6,800. I really like him in this type of game format. I think he has a potential for another big game. I don't expect another 52-point fantasy effort like he did in the last game against the Clippers, but I fully expect Cole Anthony to put up 35 to 40 fantasy points in this type of matchup going up against the Pistons backcourt. I think it'll be a nice battle between him and Cade in the backcourt there. And then I'm also looking at Franz Wagner, 5,600. You mentioned all these guys are healthy, but Franz Wagner is still getting 35 to 40 minutes a game. And he's coming off a nice shooting game against the Clippers, a near double-double rate, 40 fantasy points. I don't expect necessarily, again, a repeat performance like the game against the Clippers. But, again, this is a perfect matchup for him going up against the Pistons, especially on the wing side. They're one of the worst scoring defenses in the league. So I do expect both these guys to really outshine their price tags. And there is one guy that I'm aligned with you on, and that is Gary Harris, 3,800. He's one of my favorite value plays just because of the minutes he's been getting, you mentioned. And so those are the 3 guys I'm looking at. It's going to be Cole Anthony's my favorite play, followed by Franz Wagner, and then rounding out my lineup with Gary Harris sprinkled in as well. I'm not going to have too much interest in Mo Bamba outside of any tournaments.
All right, I like it. Let's jump on over to the next game of the night. We have the Boston Celtics taking on the Atlanta Hawks, two playoff expecting teams, not playing as great as they were hoping at this time of the year, but we have a 218 game total. The Hawks are 2-point home favorites, and the Hawks, actually both these teams have been playing a lot better basketball of late. The Hawks, we do not have an injury report for them as of yet, but the Celtics just have Dozier. I combined Bol and PJ Dozier right there. They have those two as out for the year, but there's nothing on the Hawks right now. I will throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at on this Celtics side of the ball?
Yeah, on the Celtics side of the ball, the guy I'm looking at is going to be Jaylen Brown, 8,900, coming off a nice 51 fantasy point effort with 30 and 10 against the Kings in a blowout where he played very limited minutes to boot. I expect this game to stay much closer, and I do expect him to really shine here. It's a perfect matchup, a perfect opportunity for Jaylen Brown to really get off to a hot start, and this is a perfect way to even save some salary versus Jason Tatum, who is priced at 10,100, coming off two monster games in a row. We've really rounding into form as the de facto main piece here for the Celtics team. But I actually do like Jaylen Brown a little bit more, and I'll take the salary savings as well into my lineup builds. And then as far as anyone else on the Celtics side of the ball, the only guy I'm really looking at is going to be Robert Williams up front. 7K is a pretty good price tag, but again, coming off another monster effort against the Kings, he's been playing much better basketball as of late. His price tag is a little bit high, but I do like him here against the Atlanta front court with Clint Capela and John Collins. I think he should be able to get to a double-double potential here. We all know that he can get blocks, multiple blocks a game, and this is a perfect opportunity for him to continue that. So I'm looking at Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams, and then I'll sprinkle in for tournaments. If I do have the salary, I will throw in some Jason Tatum in lineups. But again, I'd rather have Jaylen Brown as well. Any interest in Brown or Tatum here?
Yeah, and the Hawks, they've been playing better lately since they're starting to get a little bit healthier. But overall on the year, they have one of the worst defenses in the league. They have one of the best offensive ratings in the league and one of the worst defensive ratings in the league. So I do have some interest in Brown and Tatum here. Probably not as much Tatum, just because who's on the slate. I don't know if I'll go 10-1. I do like the Brown call where you save some money there. Tatum's probably going to get a lot of DeAndre Hunter, who's their pretty much best perimeter defender now. So I do like the Brown call there. Another guy I'd be looking at is Marcus Smart at 5,600, and I will throw in a ThriveFantasy here. I like him to get over that 1.5 steals that he has. I think he'll get 2, and that's what I'm projecting here against even against a solid offensive team. The Hawks do turn the ball over quite a bit, 11.6 turnovers per game. They run the ball, or they push the ball a lot. So I like Marcus Smart here too at 5,600. And his first game against them, the only game that they played against him, it was in November. He played 35 minutes. He had 31 fantasy points. And he only shot 3 of 10 from the field, didn't make a three-pointer. Yes, that was 11 assists there, but he did have 2 steals, 3 rebounds, only 8 points. I expect a little bit better shooting game from him in this one. Maybe not as many assists, but I expect another 30-ish points here or more, and I like that value for him. So the two people I'm looking at the most are Brown and Smart with you. And I'll jump on over to the other side of the ball. Trey Young, 10-6. He has been rock solid. Last 3 games, all in the 40s. The upside is still there. 2 games before that, 68 and 54 fantasy points. So we know the upside is there. And the one game he played against Boston, he did have a dud. He shot only 12 shots, 4 of 12 from the field. Did manage an 18 and 11 double-double, but had 0 rebounds. That is not something he normally does. He usually pitches in 3, 4, 5 or so. So I expect a bounce back from him, but I'm probably not going to pay 10-6. Both these teams are playing a little bit better. Where I'm looking at the most is looking at Bogdanovic and Galinari, trying to get some value here. Bogdanovic at only 4,400. He came back in the last one after 12 days off, had a nice 18.7 assist game for 35 fantasy points. 11 shots. If he's getting shots in the double digits at only 4,400, that's a very solid price tag. And I mentioned Galinari. He's playing mid 20s minutes. Another guy to take a chance on. Outside of last game, he was putting up 5 straight games of at least 23 fantasy points. So there's some value to be had there. I do prefer Bogdanovic as the upside guy there, but Galinari would be another option as well. But those are the two guys that I'm mainly looking at here. I think the battle up front is going to be very, very exciting for a real life standpoint with Capela and Rob Williams. But I'm leaning more towards the Bogdanovic and Gallinari's further value. How about you?
Yeah, I'm actually, I think I'm in alignment here. Trey Young, 10,600 is a fantastic matchup here for him. He's actually my Thrive Fantasy pick in this game, actually, on the other side.
Double Thrive.
Double Thrive in this game. I like him over 8.5 total assists. It's worth only 80 points for Thrive, but considering he does have that double-digit assist upside, I think this is a perfect matchup, a perfect opportunity for him to get in the double digits. 3 out of the last 5 games, he's gotten over that 10 assist mark. So I do expect him to hit that here in this game. And also for daily fantasy circumstances as well, I do like Trey Young. His price tag is a little high, as we talked about. He hasn't had a ceiling game for a while, so I'm probably going to reserve him more for tournaments. And I'm with you on the Bogdanovic call at 4,400. That's a fantastic price tag coming off a 23-minute effort in a game against the Kings. He's starting to get more comfortable, starting to get his legs a little bit more warmed up and ready for NBA action coming off the knee injury. So I do like him here at 4,400. One of the better value plays of the night in terms of the Hawks. I'm not going to have a lot of interest in the front court here. John Collins, 6,700 is just a little bit too high of a price tag. We haven't seen a good John Collins performance in probably over a week now. So I'm not going to be going there. And then same with Clint Capela. Clint Capela is just a shell of himself, it seems, in this lineup. He's not getting rebounds. He's not getting blocks, which we're accustomed to seeing as well from Clint. So he can turn it around in the near future, and his price tag will skyrocket again, as we've seen earlier this season. But I'm not going to have a lot of shares there. I'm with you. The only guy that I'm really going to be targeting here is Bogdanovic at 4,400 for that salary savings.
More than 1 in 3 people will face cancer in their lifetime. Unfortunately, fear can stop you from getting your cancer screening, but it won't stop cancer. Early detection can save your life. Don't wait for symptoms to appear to act. Cancer screening is safe, effective, and accessible for everyone, including free or low-cost screening programs. Go to cancerscreeninfo.com right now for free screening resources and recommendations from the American Cancer Society. Don't wait. Early detection can save your life. Go to cancerscreeninfo.com today. Cancerscreeninfo.com.
You've dreamed of building a family, but the journey hasn't been easy. I'm Dr. Laura Shaheen, a reproductive endocrinologist helping people build families every day. On our new podcast, Baby or Bust, we'll be learning from both reproductive experts and people who have faced challenges just like yours. Join us every week for Baby or Bust, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to follow us so you never miss an episode.
All right, I like it. Let's jump on over to the next game at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. We have the Los Angeles Lakers taking on the Charlotte Hornets. Don't have a spread for this one, but I can only imagine it's going to be up there, if not up there for the highest spread of the night with these two teams playing. But we do have an injury report. The Lakers are on the back end of a back-to-back, so we don't have one for them. LeBron James sat out Thursday's game. I expect him to play Friday, and I expect the opposite for AD, who played Thursday's game. Probably going to sit this one out on Friday, just coming back from his injury. But again, continue to check on that, monitor that situation. But on the Hornets side, Gordon Hayward is the main guy out, and Kelly Oubre is questionable. I'll throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at on the Lakers side of the ball?
Yeah, on the Lakers side of the ball, this is interesting. I think with the LeBron James news, that's going to be a huge factor. If he does end up missing the game, like we saw against the Sixers tonight, I think we know who the big target is going to be for the Lakers, and that's going to be Anthony Davis. I do expect him to play a pretty healthy amount of minutes in this type of game, assuming he does play on the second night of a back-to-back here. So we should monitor that news as well. If he plays, 9,800 is a great price tag. going up against a Hornets front court. He should absolutely dominate, assuming he gets a full allotment of minutes here as well. He's a great opportunity to really check the injury report right before the game time. Luckily, it's one of the earlier games on the slate, so we should get some news on who's playing, who's not playing. If Anthony Davis also sits out, that's where we can really hit some of the value here on the Lakers side of the ball. Guys like Dwight Howard are going to go into play here at 3,100. He's a guy that can step in and get 20 minutes if needed. If we get news that both Anthony Davis and LeBron James are out, if Anthony Davis is out, in that scenario, I do like LeBron James. And if he plays 11,200, is a great price tag. It's a great matchup. Up tempo. We've seen what LeBron James has been doing over his last few weeks. He's been absolutely carrying this team. If LeBron and Anthony Davis are both out, then we can start looking at other Laker guys to get more of the usage. Russell Westbrook, I'm not going to touch. 8,600 is a pretty low price tag for him, but I'd much rather go after some of the cost-saving guys here, like Malik Monk at 4,500. He's going to be in play for me, a fantastic value. Other guys that I'm looking at, if we get news on a bunch of these big guys out, Carmelo Anthony, 4,400, also a great price tag. Both those guys are going to have huge usage, and their usage is really going to skyrocket if we get news LeBron and Anthony Davis are out. If either of those big names are out, then I'll play the other one with confidence here, and that's how I'm really looking at it from the Lakers side of the ball here.
Yeah, and I'm with you in alignment. The only thing that I would change, if both of them are out, Russell Westbrook at 87, I would love that. If one of them is out, if that one is Anthony Davis, I do like Westbrook a little more too. I just think the matchup is going to be super fast paced. He'll get a lot of breakaway opportunities here. But if both of them are in, I'm not going to look at Russell Westbrook at 8,600. I would prefer AD out, and I'd prefer both of them out to have a really maximized Russ there. But everything else, fully agreed on. I'm going to jump on over to the Charlotte side of the ball. With Oubre is probably the guy that we're going to want to monitor here. He is currently questionable. If he's out and also Hayward's out, that opens up a lot of minutes for guys like Cody Martin, who's likely going to start. McDaniels was out, and he's already actually ruled out for this one as well. So he would be normally the other guy to jump in there and get some extra minutes. But there's going to be a ton of minutes open for Cody Martin. And maybe they play a little bit bigger of lineups now that AD is there. Maybe Plumlee plays a little bit more. They shipped over PJ Washington to the 4 if Oubre misses. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But Cody Martin would be the guy of those three that I'm keying in on if Oubre's out. Even if he's not, he's probably going to start and play a good amount of minutes. If Oubre does play, I think that matchup is pretty solid for 5,700. We can look right at the top and LaMelo Ball. Point guards are killing the Lakers right now, and they've been killing them for a little while. LaMelo Ball just coming off of a monster triple-double, 29, 10, and 13 for 69 fantasy points. He only went up a couple $100. This matchup is fantastic for him. I am going to have some exposure to LaMelo Ball. That's going to be my favorite guy regardless, and then I'm looking more towards Cody Martin for a lot of value if Kelly Oubre doesn't play. And I don't mind Kelly Oubre if he plays as well. But what are you looking at on this side of the ball?
Yeah, on this side of the ball, you touched on LaMelo Ball. 8,400 is just an absolute steal of a price tag here for him, coming off a nice monster triple-double. We're starting to finally see those triple-doubles. I think I just said farting. I absolutely did. So feel free to.
That's a good one.
Apologies. LaMelo Ball. Let me get my train of thought back. LaMelo Ball has 2 triple doubles in his last 5 games. So I do expect another potential triple double here, especially if LeBron James and Anthony Davis are both out. He's going to be firmly in play. He's actually my favorite play in this game, especially price per dollar, as far as is an opportunity per dollar as well. And then you mentioned Cody Martin. I love Cody Martin here at 4,400, especially if Kelly Oubre is out. He'll get a bigger boost as well. But even if Kelly Oubre is not in the game, even if he does play, then I will still like him, especially with Gordon Hayward entering protocols. I think he'll get a lot more usage. So both of those guys are going to be firmly in play for me. Miles Bridges 7,600 is just a little bit too high of a price tag for me. Coming off a string of games where he hasn't really shown a lot a lot of ceiling type performances. So I'd much rather have guys, like I mentioned, LaMelo Ball and Cody Martin rounding out my lineups. And that's really it on the Hornets side. I'm going to keep it simple and just play those two guys.
I like it. Let's jump on over to the first game at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and there's quite a few. There's 5 games at 8 p.m., one at 8:30, one at 9, and then one late game at 10. We're just getting to the first one. We have the Portland Trailblazers taking on the Houston Rockets. We do have a spread for this one. The Blazers are 3-point road favorites, and we have a whopping 232. Of the game totals that we have currently, this is the highest. I would expect Lakers and Hornets to challenge, if not beat that one as well. But we don't have that spread at the moment. On the injury report, we have C.J. Ellerby, doubtful. Damian Lillard, Nasir Little, out. Larry Nance Jr., out. Cody Zeller, also out. Dennis Smith Jr. and Robert Covington, questionable. And Usman Garuba, out for the Rockets. I'll throw it over to you, my friend. A lot of people out on the Rockets, or on the Blazers. What are you looking at here, and how do you make of it?
Yeah, the Blazers are an interesting team here. When it comes to this matchup, going up against the Rockets, it should be an absolute offensive explosion. I have another Thrive Fantasy pick for everyone on the Blazers side of the ball, so I'm hitting Thrive Fantasy very, very early and often here. And I do like CJ McCollum, 25.5 total points and assists in this game, worth 100 points. I think he has a good opportunity to go over that amount. I can see a potential 20-10 points and assists game here against the Rockets. Like I said, he should get plenty of more additional usage, especially with all of these guys out for the Blazers. He should absolutely dominate both sides of the ball. So I do expect him to hit that 25.5 total. Coming off a 20-point and 6 assist night where he again didn't have to do a lot because they got blown out of the building by the Mavericks. I expect the opposite here. I expect this game to potentially stay close, and I see CJ McCollum is going to have a ton of usage here at 7,300. I like him. Anthony Simons, another guy that I'm looking at 6,800, is backcourt mate. I'd rather take CJ McCollum and pay the extra 500 just because of the safer floor. Although Anthony Simons has been playing fantastic and pretty rock solid, I think this is a perfect matchup for CJ to really have a signature type of game here for the Trailblazers. And then I'm not going to overthink it here. The other guys that I'm looking at are going to be Yusuf Nurkic at only $8,000 going up against Christian Wood. He's coming off just a string of great games. He had a slightly poor performance, definitely a downturn performance against the Mavericks in a blowout, but I expect him to get his minutes back up. I expect a double-double as well here. So that price tag doesn't scare me off. So I'm looking at really going to be 3 guys: Nurkic, Anthony Simons, CJ McCollum, with CJ McCollum being my favorite play and my Thrive Fantasy pick as well.
Yeah, and I like McCollum. I like Simons too. Those two I'm definitely targeting. Robert Covington, if he does play at 5,500 against a former team of his, I think that's a pretty solid price tag as well. But if he doesn't play, that becomes super interesting for me. Who is going to fill that spot? Is it going to be Tony Snell? Because if it is, I have no interest in him. But if it's someone random, like we'll have to see there. But if he doesn't play, that front court is just depleted. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. That might be like 40 minutes for someone, because Tony Snell is not that guy. But keep an eye on that. But I'm with you. I really like McCollum, Simons. I like Nurkic, but I probably won't be paying $8K. I would prefer the other 2 guards against this Rockets team instead. And speaking of the Rockets, they are pretty much fully healthy unless they decide not to be. So we'll keep an eye on that. Christian Wood, 8-2. I would prefer Nurkic, but I also would just prefer the 2 guards on the other side of the ball more. This is going to be a good matchup for guards in specific. I think Eric Gordon at 4,800 makes some sense here, as long as he could play. He played 25 minutes in the last one, but they lost by 30. The last couple games that were close, the 3 games before that, you can even count 4 games before that, at least 29 minutes. So that's what I'm expecting here from him. And the Blazers are probably going to be playing a lot smaller anyway. So Eric Gordon, to me, 4,800 makes for a solid price tag. Kevin Porter Jr. as well, 6,400. He's been very hit or miss, but he's been pretty consistent over the last 5 games here. At least he has 2 games in the mid-30s, 2 games in the 40s, and 1 game just under 30. I think at that $6,400 price tag, you can hit value here with some upside. So I'm sticking to the backcourt guys in Porter Jr. and Eric Gordon, and I like both of them here. Maybe take a swing at Garrison Matthews, but probably not. I think we have a better swing out there. But what are you looking at on this side of the ball?
Yeah, this side of the ball, I'm definitely in alignment here. It's definitely a guards world, especially against Trailblazers. It should be a fun battle. Kevin Porter Jr. has been playing a lot better as of late in terms of his efficiency. He's not turning the ball over as much. In his last 3 games, he has 6 total turnovers. Just to equate that a little bit, the game before that, he had 6 turnovers in 1. So I like Kevin Porter to continue to really push the offense and be a much better playmaker for this team. And therefore, this game should stay close with him playing efficient basketball. He does have double-double upside with his assists, coming off 3 straight games where he almost had 10 assists. So it can very well hit that here. So I like Kevin Porter Jr. 6,400 a lot. As far as anyone else that I'm really looking at, I actually do like some shares of Christian Wood, although I'd much rather have Nurkic, safer floor, and probably a little bit lower of a ceiling, but a much safer floor with Nurkic at 8,000. So I'll have Christian Wood as more of a tournament option for me. The only other guy I'm looking at is probably going to be aligned with you. Eric Gordon, 4,800 is a great price tag for him. He's under 5K. If he gets 30 minutes in this one, he's going to have the green light to shoot. If you can make some threes, get some shots into the hoop, Eric Gordon becomes a great play. But for me, I'd much rather take the safe, steady arm. It's even crazy to say to everyone, but Kevin Porter Jr. is probably the safest play here on the Rockets side.
Yeah, crazy to say. It really is. We're going to jump on to the next game. We have the Utah Jazz taking on the Memphis Grizzlies in Memphis. No spread yet. In an injury report, we have Kyle Anderson, Dylan Brooks, Tyus Jones, all out. And Rudy Gobert is also out for the Jazz, with Donovan Mitchell as questionable. I'll throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at on this Jazz side of the ball?
Yeah, the Jazz are interesting. If Donovan Mitchell plays at 9,100, he becomes an automatic option, especially if we get word that he's not limited in any way. I think this is a great matchup going up against Ja Morant here. I do like Donovan Mitchell. If Donovan Mitchell is out, I'm going to have some Jordan Clarkson love, but 7,200 is just way too high of a price tag for Mr. Clarkson. I'd much rather take the cost savings and go with a guy like Mike Conley, who's 7,100. Both these guys are priced a little bit too high. If we get the Mitchell news early on, hopefully that'll be definitely a differentiating point as well. In terms of who I'm going to play here for the Jazz. In terms of anyone else in the front court, I'm not going to be looking anywhere in terms of Hassan Whiteside. Again, price too high. Rudy Gobert, questionable at 9K. Actually, no, he is out. Apologies. With Rudy Gobert out, I still don't like Hassan Whiteside at 1,600. The only guy, again, I'm looking at is Donovan Mitchell at 9,100 if he plays. If he doesn't play, I can pretty much cross out the Utah Jazz here from this side of the ball. Any interest in anyone on the Jazz for you?
Yeah, and especially if Mitchell plays, everybody is just a little bit expensive. Clarkson, Conley, they shouldn't be this high. They should be closer to 6K here. Bogdanovic is near 7K. That's too high. I don't hate Whiteside at 6'9", because he's going to have to play a lot, and he's their only true center without Gobert. Like Rudy Gay, Eric Pascal, Azubuike, those are the only guys that they have behind them really that are going to get center minutes. So I don't hate Whiteside, but I probably won't be paying 7K for him as well. They could also throw in Jaron Jackson Jr. at the 5 a lot and spread him out, and then he becomes very useless if he has to stay away from the paint. So I'm not huge on anyone on the Jazz side either, but Mitchell does become an option if he's there for me as well. And then if he's not, while everybody else gets a big bump in usage, they're just a little too high price for me to want to attack them against the Grizzlies defense, who's been really, really good after that first opening month. But I'll jump on over to the other side of the ball. And Ja Morant, Jaron Jackson Jr. I really like Jaron Jackson Jr. With no Rudy Gobert. I really like that Thrive Fantasy bet as well for the over. at 23.5 points and rebounds. The first time he played against the Jazz, he actually scored 26 actual points and had 8 rebounds, which is higher than his season average rate there in that alone. In both scoring, he beat that the points and rebounds just scoring alone and added 8 rebounds. So take out Gobert, and there's a lot more to like here, especially with Hassan Whiteside, who tends to fall asleep and chase blocks a lot on the defensive end. So really like the Jaron Jackson Jr. to beat that Thrive Fantasy bet. Ja Morant, normally I would say I would go on the under on this at 7.5 assists, but it's kind of tough. I don't know if I'll probably wind up going slightly over if Mitchell misses, and if he plays, probably under. But without Gobert there, a lot of easy opportunities for people to finish around the rim here, as he is, if not if not the best, one of the best rim protectors in the league, however you want to look at it. But for me, for DFS, I'm looking at Jaron Jackson Jr. The most, and that's probably where I'm leaving it for now. I don't mind Desmond Bane at 6,100, even without Gobert and whatnot. The Jazz are still a really solid defense, but I think Jaron Jackson Jr. has the best value here. How about you?
Yeah, I'm definitely in alignment here in terms of this side of the ball. Jaron Jackson Jr., 6,700 is a great price tag. Coming off a 44-point fantasy effort, he gets blocks in almost every game outside of the Mavericks game, and multiple blocks, at least 4 blocks to boot. So I do love him, regardless of who's playing in the front court for the Jazz. I think he should be able to absolutely have his way in terms of from a defensive standpoint. He should be able to score at will as well. So I do like him. And then normally I'm with you. Ja Morant, 10,300 is a little bit too high of a price tag for him. I was saying on the pod last week that Ja Morant's going to be over 10K before we know it, and here we are. We have reached that point. I don't want to have record any receipts, but I definitely called this what would happen, and I don't think he's going to drop below 10K for the rest of the season. So again, the high price tag. He's coming off some monster efforts. If this game stays close against the Jazz, he's going to be asked to do a little bit of everything. Coming off a 41-point effort in his last game. I do have some shares of Ja Morant. I'd rather have him than, for example, Trey Young, who we mentioned earlier, and I'll take the cost savings, but he's probably going to be more of a tournament play anyway, just because of his price here. And I do like the Desmond Bane call as well. Yeah, I'm going to have a little bit of Desmond Bane shares as well. But Jaron Jackson Jr., I'm with you, is the only rock solid, slam dunk play here in this matchup.
All right, let's jump on over to the next game at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Los Angeles Clippers taking on the Miami Heat in Miami. No spread for this one, but we do have an injury report. We know Kawhi, Paul George, both out. So is Marcus Morris Sr. for personal reasons. On the Heat, we have Lowry out, Keith out, Oladipo, Okpala, Silva, and Jimmy Butler is questionable for this one. I'll throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at on the Clippers side of the ball? And things do get a lot easier for them offensively if there's no Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, if both these guys are out, there's a couple guys that I'm looking at on the Clippers side, and it's going to be some of the value guys. It's going to be Amir Coffey, 5,400, coming off 2 solid games in a row where he's been getting 35 minutes a game in recent games outside of a game against the Knicks. So I think Coffey is firmly in play, something I thought I'd be saying outside of the morning time a couple weeks ago. So he's definitely going to be a guy that I'm looking at in lineups. And then Luke Kennard at 4,500, coming off a monster game and then a slightly let down game against the Magic where he only had 25 fantasy points. Again, if he gets to 30 fantasy points, he's immediately hits value. So I like Luke Kennard here at 4,500. And then other guys I'm really going to be looking at, it's probably going to be at center, and that's going to be Ivica Zubac coming up against Bam Adebayo. If he can hold his own, we have seen what he can do when he holds his own against the Knicks. He had a 17 and 14-point effort a few nights ago. So again, we do see a potential ceiling here, but with Bam Adebayo down low, it's not someone I would necessarily target. So I'd much rather have, as far as cash games, it's going to be Amir Coffey, like I mentioned, at 5,400, and Luke Kennard at 4,500, and that's really going to round out my interest here.
Yeah, and pretty in line with you. We don't have their 3 top scorers. I don't really want Reggie Jackson, even without Kyle Lowry on their side, and possibly Jimmy Butler, 6,100 is not a bad price tag, but the last couple games just left a sour taste in my mouth. Only 16 minutes on 1 of 9 shooting against Washington. They wound up winning by 1. 19 minutes against Orlando, 3 of 11 shooting. They wound up winning by 9. While he did beat that value 4 straight games before that, that's very weird right there. But I do really like Amir Coffey at 5,400. He's kind of taken on just a bigger workload. He's also been a couple hit or misses in there as well. But for the most part, he's playing minutes in the mid-30s since they really ramped him up here, and he's playing a very, very good basketball. So I do really like him. He's probably my favorite on this side. Terrence Mann's always a guy that I keep wanting to continue to play. In the last 2 games, he has a combined 30 actual points scored. So kudos to him. 21 actual or attempts, 12 makes in those 2 games. So if he's going to continue to expand his offensive arsenal at only 4K, that's another guy I'm going to look at. But those are the 2 guys I'm looking at the most. Maybe sprinkle in some Reggie Jackson. We'll see what happens with Jimmy Butler. But the last couple games are really, really sour for me. I'll flip on over to the other side of the ball. And a lot of this is going to depend on, is Jimmy in or is Jimmy out? If Jimmy is out, Bam Adebayo at 7,500 there's extra usage for him. He hasn't really taken advantage of it, but we know he does a lot of everything. And if he's going to get, instead of 7 to 12 shots, if he's going to get now 13 to 16 shots, that opens up a lot for him because we know he's going to be a playmaker. He's going to take over a lot of the playmaking duties from Lowry and Butler's absence. Also, we know the rebounds are there. We know the stocks are there. More shots are there. 7,500 becomes a very good value for him. Tyler Hero would be running the show. I know he just came back after a 9-day absence, but he put up 34 fantasy points, and there will be more responsibility if there's no Lowry and Butler. And then Struss probably starts, or Martin. One of those 2 will likely get the start with Gabe Vincent. I would look at the other 2, the first 2 I mentioned, because they are super cheap. 4,600 for Struss. Martin at only 3,700. They'll be come and play for me if there's no Butler. If there is Butler, I can leave all of them alone. And then there's 2 Thrive Fantasy bets. We don't know about Butler, 36.5 points, rebounds, assists. If he plays, he probably beats that, but he's questionable right now. So how much is he going to play? Then there's the PJ Tucker, over or under 2.5 blocks and steals combined. He's literally only had that twice on the year. I don't know why it's 2.5. If it was 1.5, I'd probably go over, but 2.5, that's tough. Law of averages say he's not going to do it, so I would just go under on that. He's only done it twice all year. But how about you, man? What are you looking at on this side of the ball?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you mentioned, Jimmy Butler news is going to be the big deciding factor for us, how we want to attack this game. If Jimmy Butler is out, Tyler Hero 6,400 becomes a slam dunk play, coming off 2 pretty solid efforts in a row against the Knicks and Raptors, where he had at least 34 fantasy points. I like him a lot here. If Butler's out, and then if Butler's out, you could take some shots at Max Struss and guys like Martin, but I'm not going to have too much interest there. I'd much rather take a safer floor like Bam Adebayo 7,500. I think becomes a smash play if Butler's out. So the guys I'm looking at, again, assuming we get the Butler news, Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero firmly in play. If Butler ends up playing, I'll probably stick with a guy like Bam Adebayo, more of a tournament play, and I'll probably lessen my interest in a guy like Tyler Hero here for the Miami Heat.
Right, I like it. Now we're jumping on over to the next game. Indiana Pacers taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Don't have a spread for this one. We do have an injury report. The Indiana Pacers have Malcolm Brogdon is out. TJ McConnell, Miles Turner, TJ Warren. They're all out. Sabonis is questionable. The Pacers are on the front end of a back-to-back. I forgot to mention the Celtics are another one. And the Miami Heat and the Memphis Grizzlies. Sorry about that. But the Pacers are on the front end of a back-to-back. So Sabonis' questionable tag is something to definitely consider. I wouldn't expect him, especially this close to the trade deadline, to play both ends of a back-to-back if he does play. So he's probably going to sit out 1. So keep an eye on that. On the other side of the ball, we have nobody on the main roster. Pokemon Isaiah Roby overall in the G League. But Derek Favors is the lone guy on the main roster that is out. I will throw it over to you. What are you looking at on the Pacers side of the ball?
Yeah, the Pacers are interesting here. If we do get word that Sabonis plays, I think he becomes a pretty good play at 10,400 against this Thunder front court. Again, we don't know how many minutes he's going to play coming back after over a week absence here. So I'll probably reserve him more for tournaments. But if he does end up playing, it'll definitely lower some of my interest here on the Pacers side of the ball. Karis LeVert 8,800 is just a little bit too high. We haven't seen him even hit close to that kind of value in a couple of games. So I'm not going to have a lot of interest there from Mr. LeVert here. And then as far as anyone else here on the Pacers, I'm not going to have interest in guys like Justin Holiday at 5K, priced a little bit too high, priced appropriately based on what he's been doing. Same thing with Jeremy Lamb at 4,200. Again, they're not getting a lot of fantasy movement, and I don't see them posing much. I don't have much interest going there in this game. So I'd much rather avoid all of these guys altogether, especially if we get news that Sabonis ends up playing. He's the only guy that I might consider for tournaments, and that's about it.
All right. Yeah. If Sabonis does play and he's ready to go, 30 minutes or so in this one, this is going to be a solid matchup for him. The Thunder really don't have much front court presence as is. And Sabonis will be able to impose his will on that. So I do like him at 10-4. If he doesn't play, then it becomes a usage game for everybody else. But Tadze really hasn't played a ton of minutes. The last two games, only 22 and 19. A lot of that due to the first against the Pelicans was foul trouble. He had 5 fouls in 22 minutes. The next game, not as much foul trouble, but he shot 8 of 12 from the field against Charlotte. Charlotte just blew them out, and they play a lot smaller, so it cut him off there. This one, they might play smaller as well, but you'll see a lot of Jeremiah Robinson Earl at center. I think Batatse could still play 25 to 35-ish minutes in this one. I don't mind him here. But yeah, I'm mostly with you. I'm not really going to look too much on this side of the ball. Duarte would be another guy to take a chance on, but I do like a lot of other people in this 6K range or give or take there that I'm not going to have too much exposure to them. I'm with you for the most part. I like Sabonis the most if he plays, and if he does play, I really don't need anybody else. If he doesn't play, then I'll open up some things for some other guys to take advantage of. On the other side of the ball, I mentioned there's just all they have is value here. But without Favors, who doesn't play a lot anyway, Jeremiah Robinson Earl is someone I am interested in under 4K. He is playing minutes in the mid to high 20s. 2 out of his last 3 games, he's hit at least 27 fantasy points. So there is some value to be had here, especially if Sabonis doesn't play. Makes his life on the defensive end and rebounding a lot easier. At only 3,800, you can take worse shots than him. Kenrick Williams, another guy. He played 25 and 30 minutes in his last 2 games, only 3,700. That type of volume, even though he hit 2 of 10 shots in the last one, make that 4 of 10, and he's hitting over 24 fantasy points there, so I like him as well. Those are probably the 2 that I'm taking the most, and then you can always take a chance on a Shea at 9,300. He's been playing really good basketball, just fantastic basketball, over 57 the last 2, 3 out of the last 5 over 50 points. And I mean, you're playing against a beat up Indiana Pacer team, so you can definitely take a chance on him there, and the price tag is solid. And Lou Dort, we always can catch fire at random times. The minutes are going to be there. This could be one of those fire games at 5,400. Don't love it, but if you're feeling frisky on a big Friday night slate, I don't mind taking a chance on him. How about you, buddy?
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, it's going to start with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Again, you touched on it. He's been playing lights out recently in recent games. He's been getting a lot of minutes, a lot of usage, doing a little bit of everything. A guy that definitely is in play for me at 9,300. I'd much rather him over Karis LeVert at 8,800 on the other side of the ball. When it comes to anyone else, really, on the Thunder, it's tough. It's tough to really target anyone. Josh Giddey at 3,300 is priced a little bit too high. We haven't seen him get to that double-double, triple-double upside that we've seen from the rookie about a week or 2 ago. But again, this is a great opportunity, a great matchup potentially against the Pacers, but I'm not going to have too many shares there. I like the Kenrick Williams call as a value play, 3,700, getting those minutes. If you can just make some shots, he becomes a fantastic play. So I'm definitely in alignment there when it comes to some value. I'm not going to have interest in anyone else like Aaron Wiggins. his minutes have been trending in the wrong direction here for this Thunder team. So that's really going to be it. I'm not going to have any interest in Jeremiah Robinson Earl, despite coming off a pretty solid 27 fantasy point effort. I just don't know if he gets enough minutes here against the Pacers to warrant his price tag. So I'll take the safe play here and go with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander here for the Thunder.
All right. Do you like that Thrive 22.5 points?
Yes, I do actually. I think it's an absolute smash play, especially the over for 90 points. It's great value as well.
Yeah, I like it too. I'm with you. We're jumping on over to the last game at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Denver Nuggets taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. Pelicans are on the front end of a back-to-back as well. They are the last team on the front end of a back-to-back, and we have one lone team on the back end we'll get to after. But on the injury report, Michael Porter Jr., Vlatko Cancar, Jamal Murray all out. On the Pelicans, Lazauda, Zion, Murphy, Kyra Lewis all out. Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, two names we've got to keep an eye on as questionable. Throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at on this Nuggets side of the ball?
Yeah, when it comes to the Nuggets, it's interesting. I definitely like some guys here, starting with, of course, Mr. Nikola Jokic here going up against the Pelicans. Again, had a pretty efficient game in his last outing against the Nets where he had a near triple-double. We've seen just monster efforts time in and time out this season for Jokic. And in his last game, he actually came up short of his normal monster effort. So I do expect a bounce back here, despite having the highest price tag on the slate. I think he definitely warrants some consideration here. The other guy I'm actually looking at from a value perspective is his backup, Demarcus Cousins. If we get word that this game ends up turning into a blowout, Demarcus Cousins should get some decent run here. And a guy that can, from a fantasy perspective, we know what he can do when he gets minutes. So if he gets minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, especially if it ends up being a blowout situation and Jokic doesn't play a lot of minutes, I can see him really hitting value here. Outside of those two guys, I'll have a little bit of interest also in Will Barton at 5,500. He's a guy that we've seen what he can do in his last game, 47 fantasy points, a double-double. He definitely has some upside. Even if he gets I think his floor is pretty safe here at 35 fantasy points, and at 5,500, that's a great price tag. So for me, it's Will Barton and Jokic, and then I'll sprinkle in some tournament lineups with Demarcus Cousins just for value in the front court. What about you? Any interest in the reigning MVP?
Yeah, I think there's always some interest in here, especially in cash. I know he's super expensive, but he's just crushing it all the time. His lone game against the Pelicans, he had nearly 73 fantasy points. He had a 39, 11, and 11 triple-double. So, I think Jokic is always in play no matter what his price tag is. He can be at, honestly, 14,000, and if you can figure out the pieces around him, just like this Denver Nuggets team, who is not good, who might be one of the worst teams in the league if they didn't have Jokic, your lineup, if you can figure out your lineup around him, he can still bring back money here. So I really like Jokic, especially in cash games. It might be harder for tournaments to get those upside guys, but Jokic is always in play here. Outside of him, everybody's somewhat cheap. Aaron Gordon is the next highest guy at 6,300. Will Barton at 5,500. I have some slight interest in this matchup. I think it'll be pretty solid, and he has 2 out of the last 3 games over 47 fantasy points, so I'll take a chance on him. Monte Morris is only 4,400 now. He just continues to drop. I know his play hasn't been great, but we know 5 games ago he had a near 48 fantasy point triple-double, near triple-double, and we know the upside there, especially in a matchup like this, so I'll take some chances on him too. Those are probably the 2 guys mostly. Cousins could be in play if he's getting 15 to 23 minutes here. I don't know if I have the nuts to take that, but the other 2 guys definitely in play for me in this one. And then I'll jump on over to the other side of the ball. Thing we have to keep an eye on, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, both missed last game. Brandon Ingram has missed a couple games now. This will be he'll miss at least 7 days. He hasn't played since against the Knicks on the 20th. If he does play, I don't want to play him. Looks like a pretty bad injury at the time, and I don't think he'll be fully ramped up. I'll be a little rusty. Josh Hart, on the other hand, I think he just rested because he twisted his ankle, even though he came back that game against the Pacers, but they were on the back end of a back-to-back, so they just rested him to be cautious, I believe. This is the front end of a back-to-back, so they could be cautious on one of these games. If he plays on this one, especially with no Ingram, 6,500, really, really, really like that price tag. Josh Hart is just a do-it-all guy. He really has a lot of heart, and that's no pun intended. He just really does. Herb Jones at 4,900, another guy I have some interest in. The offensive game isn't always there, but he's just been a very consistent player. Very, very good rookie player here at 4,900. We know the stocks are always coming in, some rebounds. When he does score, that's when he hits in the 30 points in fantasy value, so I like that there. If Ingram and Hart are both out once again, Nickeil Alexander-Walker becomes a guy to look at. He took 22 shots in the last one without those two and J-Val, 13 before that, playing back-to-back games of 30-plus minutes. Even if Hart plays and no Ingram, he still becomes slightly in play for me at 4,400. You could take a shot at him. But if they're both out, I will be having a lot of exposure to him. But how about you, my friend?
Yeah, for me, it probably starts with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, especially if we get news that those guys are out. Coming off a monster 31-point real-life effort in his last game against the Sixers. Regardless of game script here against the Nuggets, I think he's going to get plenty of usage. We know he's not shy when he gets the usage in minutes, so I do like him at that price tag. One of my favorite value plays in the entire slate, especially if we get news that these guys are all out. And then as far as anyone else, Jonas Valanciunas, 700 is going to be a guy that's in play. Again, there's a bunch of guys that we talked about in that 7K, 8K center range. So it's something we have to look at in terms of how we want to spend those dollars. But I do like him a little bit here at that price tag. And then if Ingram ends up playing in this game, 8,200 is a great price tag for him as well. Anytime you can get Ingram in that low 8K range, he should have plenty of usage as well. So those are the three guys I'm looking at. Ingram with Alexander Walker, my favorite play, and then followed by a little bit of Ingram, and I'll round it out with some tournament interest in Jonas Valanciunas here.
All right, I like it. Let's jump on over to the next game. We have 3 games left. This one starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Chicago Bulls taking on the San Antonio Spurs. We have a 228 game total. The Bulls are 4-point road favorites. For this one, on the injury report, we have Lonzo, Caruso, Derrick Jones Jr., Patrick Williams, all out. Keita Bates-Diop, Devontae Cacok, Zach Collins, Josh Primo, all out on the Spurs side. I'll throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at for this Bulls team?
So for the Bulls, it's going to be interesting for me. As I've kind of touched on pods and recent articles, but Zach LaVine, 8,300, a guy that is a fantastic playmaker all of a sudden at that price tag as well, coming off 2 straight games where he's had at least seven assists, which brings me to my Thrive Fantasy pick here of 29.5 total points and assists, worth 100 points in Thrive Fantasy. I think he can hit that without any issue as well, just because of this, just because of how he's been playing, taking on that de facto point guard position with a bunch of these guys out, including Ball and Caruso. So I do like him a lot here at that price tag. The other guys that I'm going to be looking at here are the big names in terms of Demarcus Cousins, 8,500. Again, perfect game script for him, coming off 4 straight games over 46 fantasy points. So he is a value play under 9K as well. Both those guys are smash plays in this type of game scenario going up against the Spurs. I'm looking at those guys heavily. Nikola Vucevic, apologies, at 9,600 is a little bit too high of a price tag. Do I expect him to have a monster potential game? Yes, but I'd much rather save my salary and go with the other 2 guys I just mentioned in the backcourt and front court at the wing position, and that's pretty much it. I do love the young rookie in AO. I just don't know if he has enough value now with Zach LaVine back in the lineup for him to hit his price tag. So again, those are the 2 guys, DeRozan and LaVine, the 2 studs for the Bulls for me. What about you?
Yeah, and I'm with you. I like both of them. I was leaning I lean towards Levine, but the whole DeRozan going back to San Antonio thing is a nice play here. And funny thing is, he wasn't really much of a playmaker in Toronto. Didn't really do that. Wasn't part of his game. Went to San Antonio and evolved, and that's now a big part of his game. He's a big playmaker now. Looking at the entire season, he's averaging almost 5 assists per game. So that's a awesome ode to him, and he's going back in San Antonio where he played for a few years. So I do like both of them. I think they're both fairly priced. I think they can both bring back value here. I don't mind AO, like you mentioned. This team just playing small. A lot of their power forwards. We have no Ball, no Caruso. People are filling in. But there's no Patrick Williams. There's no Derrick Jones Jr. Those are guys who are playing a lot of power forward. But I don't mind AO. I'm probably not going to go there at that price. I like other people around him. But I'm with you. DeRozan and Levine are the two guys I'm looking at the most here. On the other side of the ball, it's while the Bulls are a tough defensive matchup, but it's not as tough. Now that there's no Ball, now that there's no Caruso, that's their two best wing defenders, perimeter defenders. And then Vooch is not the rim protector that you'd normally see on teams like this. And without both of those guys, Ball and Caruso, getting past them, there's really not a second line of defense. It's very hard to get past those guys on defense, and then that helps Vooch more because he doesn't have to be that big rim protector that he isn't. Without them there, it opens up things at the rim for other teams now that we're seeing. But with that said, I don't love the matchups here. Murray at 10K, probably in a very solid matchup, but I don't really want to pay 10K for him. Derek White at 6K, 6.1, I would prefer to go to, but he's just been very underwhelming lately, so I'm really not going to have much exposure to him. Yaakov Pearl is probably my favorite play on the squad at 6'4". Hopefully he doesn't have to get stretched too far out on defense, but that's a guy I think is very capable of bringing back near 40 points in this one. And Keldon Johnson would be another guy I'm looking at 5'1". I don't think the upside's huge there, but 30 points is well within reason there, 25 to 30. But I don't have huge expectations on this side of the ball, but I will have some exposure to Johnson and Pirtle. How about you?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Pirtle, 6,400. It's a great price tag. I mentioned not taking a stab on other centers like Jonas Valanciunas, 7,900. Those are more for tournaments. I actually like Pirtle quite a bit at 6,400 for cash as well. This is a great matchup for him. Definitely has some value upside as well, going up against Vucevic here. And then as far as anyone else, I actually do like Deonte Murray at 10K. He's been pretty much playing lights out outside of one game in recent efforts. He has triple-double upside every time he steps on the court. In fact, he has 3 in his last 5 games, and almost a 4th as well in those 5 games. So I think he has triple-double upside as well here at 10K. I actually do like him. There's a bunch of guys in that 10K range at point guard that we can look at. And I don't mind Deonte Murray. I think he's a solid play here. And I'm going to round out my interest with Pirtle. And then the Keldon Johnson call is interesting too at 5,100. He's always a guy that has a pretty solid floor. I don't think I'll have enough interest here with him. I'd much rather have a combination of Pirtle, and if salary allows it, I'll probably go with a little bit of Murray as well.
All right. Last 2 games of the night. First one at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the Phoenix Suns. No spread for this one. The Wolves are the lone team on the back end of a back-to-back, so no injury report for them. But Patrick Beverley did miss his 3rd straight consecutive game. I don't know if they didn't want to play him on both ends, but that's something we should keep an eye on because he's only 4,300. But the Suns have Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton, Frank Kaminsky, JaVale McGee, Abdul Nader, Cameron Payne, Dario Saric, all out. I'll throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at on the Minnesota side of the ball?
Yeah, the Minnesota side, I apologize, I can't speak anymore at this point in the night. In terms of the Minnesota side of the ball, they are playing the second night of a back-to-back here, so that's something to keep in mind going up against the Phoenix Suns here in a road contest. So we definitely want to get some injury news. If Patrick Beverley ends up suiting up in this game at 4,300, he's a fantastic value play, especially because he's going to be the freshest of all the players on this side of the ball. If he's out, D'Angelo Russell 7,800 is just too high of a price tag. I'm not going to really pay that. Anthony Edwards 7,900 also is a little bit too high of a price tag, despite a fantastic performance against the Trailblazers. I just don't know if he's going to have enough in a tank, second night of a back-to-back as well. So I'm not going to have too many shares in terms of those guys. Looking at the front court, the guys that I'm really looking at here is going to be Karl Anthony Towns, 9,500. He's been playing pretty consistent basketball, and he's priced under 10K, which is always nice for Karl Anthony Towns. This is a good opportunity, good matchup. If DeAndre Ayton is out, he should absolutely dominate Bismack Biyombo or Jalen Smith down low, whoever they put it into place there as a starting center. If Ayton plays, I'm not going to have any interest in Karl Anthony Towns, and my only interest will probably be Patrick Beverley if he ends up suiting up. Otherwise, I'm probably going to stay away from the Timberwolves side of the ball here.
Yeah, and it's funny. Third game in 4 nights for this Wolves squad, and this back-to-back, this one right here, they play Thursday night against the Warriors in Golden State, and then at Phoenix in Phoenix. The 2 best teams in the league right now. So not the greatest of back-to-backs to be had here, but yeah, I don't mind Towns at 9.5. They have Ayton listed out for this one already, so the matchup should improve here. Under 10K, he's always an option when he's under 10K. He hasn't been playing the big numbers that we've been seeing in years past, but the team is playing a lot better. That's a testament to how he's playing as well. I mentioned Pat Bev at 4,300. If he can play and he's ready to go, a 25, 35-minute role that he's accustomed to in between there, 4,300, I will take a shot at him. We know he plays a very versatile game in his fantasy game, especially on this squad when he's starting. So that's something to keep an eye on. If he does miss again, Jaden McDaniels at 3,500 is a guy I'm looking at. Had a big game a couple games ago. Tonight we're at halftime of the Thursday game, late game, playing pretty well as well. So another guy I'll look at a very cheap $3,500 price tag, and he should see around 30 minutes in this one. If Patrick Beverley is out, I would say 25 to 30 minutes or so. Yeah, I'm mostly looking at Towns here for the most part. Not really wanting to attack too much on this squad. Anthony Edwards is probably going to get a lot of Bridges. Russell's going to get some Chris Paul. Don't really love it for everybody. Jared Vanderbilt may be a solid value play at 5,300, but I'd rather try and get Towns if I can. But 5,300, I don't mind if I don't want to spend up for Towns because we have a lot of high-priced guys here. So I like the value on this team, and for the high guys, I'm with you with Towns. I'll jump on over to the other side of the ball. They have Ayton as out for this one. Bismack Biyombo is now near 6K. Outside of last game, even last game, not bad, but he's been awesome. A couple games ago, he had a 21-point, 13 rebound, 5 assist game. Obviously, that's a blow up, and we don't expect that. But at 5,800, does become another center option for the people that are going real cheap on this. I do prefer Poeltl. We just mentioned him. He's only $600 more if you have the discount. If not, I don't hate Biyombo, but I'd much rather prefer Poeltl. That said, Devin Booker, 9,900, Chris Paul, 9K. They're getting up there in price. Booker is near 10K. I wish he was back to like mid 8.5s or even just under 9. If he was 8.9, would love him. 10K, don't really want to have as much exposure to him here. Probably not going to have much exposure to anyone on this side of the ball. I think they're very good as a team. Even though we have a tightened rotation, it makes me look at Cam Johnson a little bit more. Alfred Payton has to get minutes as a backup. But even with all the injuries, probably not going to have much exposure to anybody. But I won't mind taking chances on Biyombo or Cam Johnson. How about you, buddy?
Yeah, for me, I'm probably going to take some chances on, you mentioned Cam Johnson, 4,700. For all the reasons you just mentioned, he's getting consistent minutes. He's playing over 35 minutes a game now with no Drake Crowder in the lineup. So I do like him. I think he has a pretty solid floor. And you touched on it. Chris Paul and Devin Booker are just priced too high. Booker has been playing fantastic recently. And kudos to him. I just much prefer Booker in the high 8K range versus high 9K range. So I'm probably going to fade him here across all lineups. Cam Johnson's the only guy I'm really looking at. I'm not going to have too much interest in Bismack Biyombo or Jalen Smith in that backup position, just because the front court of the Suns is pretty dicey in terms of who gets minutes, especially what we saw the other night when Biyombo isn't playing well. He gets switched out for Jalen Smith and vice versa. So I don't have too much interest in either of those guys, despite the price tag of Jalen Smith being $3,400. I'd still much rather have Cam Johnson as a solid floor guy at $4,700 versus a guy like Jalen Smith. And that's it for me on the Sun side.
All right. We're going to I wasn't sure if I was muted. I had to pull it up. We're going to the last game of the night. The New York Knicks taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. We have a 216 game total, which of the spreads that we have is easily the lowest. And the Bucks are a whopping 10-point home favorite. The injury report: Brook Lopez out, Rodney Hood doubtful, Wes Matthews probable, Rose out, Nerlens Noel, Arcidia Kona both questionable. I'll throw it over to you, my friend. What are you looking at on this Knicks side of the ball?
Yeah, the Knicks are an interesting team just because they've been playing some pretty poor basketball recently. Going up against the Bucks at a 10 p.m. Eastern start time is interesting as well in this game. I do have some interest on the Knicks side of the ball. For me, it's going to start with Julius Randle in the front court position. Again, at 9,200, there are better potential cash game plays here, and we haven't seen a Julius Randle type of 50-point effort in some time. We have seen in earlier games this season, he does have 55, 60 fantasy point upside, so that's something to monitor here. RJ Barrett, 7,400, just a little bit too high for RJ Barrett. I'd much rather have him in that 6K range, a high 6K range versus 7,400. This is not the best matchup. And then I'm also going to have some interest in Mitchell Robinson as the only other guy that I'm actually be looking at, especially for tournaments. 5,700 is a good price for him. He's getting his legs back in his last game in a blowout. He only had 7 points, 10 rebounds, and no blocks. I expect him to flirt with a double-double here against the Bucks, going up against Bobby Portis. If he can stay out of foul trouble, which is a big if, he's certainly going to be in play for me. But otherwise, there's not a single guy in the Knicks that's really cash game eligible for me going up against the Milwaukee Bucks here.
Yeah, I don't mind Mitch as well, especially since Nerlens Noel is questionable. But being at 10 o'clock, we probably won't get that news till after a swath of these games play. There's only one game at 9 p.m., one game at 8:30, and all of the other games are 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's going to be tough to get that news in time. But I do like Mitch if Nerlens Noel is out, especially. Yeah, outside of that, it's now that Cam Johnson has 2 games in. I know Tibbs said he wants him to earn his minutes. He's not going to give anybody anything. He went from 5 to 10, probably going to go to 15 in this next one. But there's just a lot of wing options and guard options on this team, and we don't even have Derrick Rose yet. Quentin Grimes is another guy there. Fournier, Burks, Barrett, Kemba, quickly. There's just a lot of options here. It's hard. And they're all fairly priced, so I'm probably not going to have much exposure to them either. I like you with the Mitch call, but outside of that, I'm pretty much with you. On the other side of the ball, though, we have another big high-priced guy in Giannis who's averaging 51 fantasy points against these guys. Probably won't go here. I would rather just pay up a couple $100 more and get Jokic in a doozy of a matchup for him. That should be closer because the Bucks or the Nuggets supporting cast isn't like the Bucks. They kind of stink. But I don't mind Chris Middleton here at 8,400. I think that's a solid price tag for him. Down game in the last one. They did lose to Cleveland by 16 points, but before that, he was on fire. Multiple games over 50 in the last 4, then 2 at least 43. So I like him here. I think he's going to have a pretty big game. And he's historically been pretty good against the Knicks. In the one game he played against the Knicks earlier in the year, he had 44.5 fantasy points, 24 points, 8 boards, 4 assists, a couple steals. I think he's a very solid play here. Bobby Portis at only 6,500. Somewhat in play, but probably not going to go there. I think I'm going to mostly sticking to Middleton, maybe take a chance on Portis, but again, I do prefer other people in that price range. But I don't hate them. I just prefer other people. How about you?
Yeah, the Bucks are interesting. I'm definitely with you on the Chris Middleton call. 8,400. He's starting to really start playing well. The reason why He was a guy that was drafted so high in a lot of fantasy leagues this season, especially for me as well. He's starting to play fantastic basketball, and this is a good opportunity for him to continue to put up some well-rounded numbers as well, going up against the Knicks at home here. So I do like that call. The guy I'm looking at outside of Iveport is actually going to be for value, and that's going to be Dante De Vincenzo at 3,800. If this game gets out of hand quickly, he should get in minutes in the high 20s, potentially 30s. We have seen what he can do in terms of starting lineup minutes. But again, if he gets those minutes, he hits some shots, he can get some steals. We know what he can do from a defensive standpoint. So I do like him as a nice value play for lineups. And I'm with you. I'm probably going to fade Giannis as well at 11,800. Just too high of a price tag in this game type of script as well.
All right, man. I like it. That does it for our 11-game slate. Before we head on out, let's throw our favorite player tiers out there real quick. I'll throw it over to you. We can just say a name. It's been, we'll go quick. We explain why we like everybody, but who is your favorite high-priced player?
Favorite high-priced player is going to have to be here. I know we said quick. I just realized that I did not. It's really hard for me to choose my favorite. You know what? I'm gonna come back to it. So if you don't mind taking the lead here, my favorite high-priced player. Yeah,
I'll go ahead. All three of my favorite guys. I'm going super upside in all three of these. My favorite high-priced player, LaMelo Ball at 8,400. Love the price tag. Love the matchup. I'll give you a moment. I'll go with my favorite mid-tier play, and that'll be, I forgot the exact price, $6,700. Jaron Jackson Jr. No Gobert. He crushed him last time. Love the upside here. Not a bad price tag. Favorite value play of the night, 4,400. Bogdanovic, again, big time upside. Just came back from injury. Love the cheap price tag. Will be playing a lot of these guys in tournaments. All right, buddy. You pick whichever one you want to go first, low, high, mid, and let us know. All right,
let's do it. Starting with the high price guy, it's going to be Jaylen Brown at 8,900. I think this is a great matchup against the Hawks. Should be in play, or 55 point upside here as well. From a mid-tier perspective, this is where it gets interesting. I mentioned him earlier on the pod, and that's Cole Anthony, 6,800. I think he's going to have an absolute field day against Cade Cunningham. Should have huge upside as well. And then from a value perspective, in terms of who I'm looking at, that's going to have to be Luke Kennard at 4,500 against the Miami Heat, especially if Jimmy Butler ends up being out for this game. I think he can definitely return some really nice value at that price tag.
All right. Love it. That does it for another edition of DFS Today. We have a huge Friday slate for you guys once again. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Dave, as always, for joining us on our Friday nights. Anything you want to say before we head on out of here?
I'm just excited to crush another 11-game slate with you. I hope all the listeners really enjoyed some of our picks, and I'm hoping everyone cashes and cashes strong.
Yeah, I wonder. I haven't checked the schedule for next week. I wonder. I feel like it gains a game every week that we go. But we'll see if we're 12 next week.
Right?
Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. We will catch you again tomorrow, and myself and Dave will catch you again next week. Bye.
NBA crossover is coming to Cleveland for NBA All-Star. This February, experience the intersection of music, art, fashion, tech, and basketball at the Public Auditorium. Celebrate the past, present, and future of the NBA with special appearances, brand experiences, limited edition apparel and collectibles, and live performances. Check out NBA Crossover February 18th, 19th, and 20th. Get tickets today at NBAEvents.com.